He was, after I gave birth, he was like, oh my gosh, if I lost you and I, went to the park with our 3 kids, I mean, think of the ladies I can like, this is a horrible thing to say. And he's like, I mean, I've got a long list. And I was like, oh, really? Because I just have 1 on my list. I don't have anyone on my list.
No celebrity feud erupts out of thin air. In the case of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, the tension had been simmering quietly behind closed doors. At least, that's what insiders would have you believe. The real catalyst for everything was Blake's $250 million lawsuit, which accused Justin of serious misconduct. If these accusations were true, then her lawsuit might have exposed a hidden side of Justin that no one had ever glimpsed before. But Justin, known for his charismatic public persona, didn't roll over. Within days, he countered with a $400 million lawsuit of his own, accusing Blake of extortion, defamation, and unleashing a media frenzy in a way that left him with no opportunity to defend himself. For Hollywood observers, it was a jaw-dropping development. Rarely do lawsuits reach such astronomical amounts. Yet here they were, battling it out in front of the entire world, their private grievances laid bare. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Some rushed to defend Blake, applauding her bravery and suggesting that her lawsuit highlighted wrongdoing that needed to be addressed. Others sided with Justin, pointing out that he rarely had so much as a whiff of controversy to his name and calling Blake's move a crass attempt at grabbing headlines. Still more took a more cynical view. This was simply a story of 2 big personalities jockeying for control in an industry built on ego and power.
So I really look at I love a challenge though, and I'm just so proud of every bit of it. We went through a whole roller coaster of the human experience, and I'm very proud.
But underlying all that noise was one undeniable truth: money talks. And at a combined $650 million, these lawsuits spoke louder than anything else in Hollywood gossip circles. It was no longer just about personal disagreements or potential harm done. When you drag that kind of money into a feud, everyone pays attention. Overnight, the confrontation became a 24/7 spectacle, with paparazzi stationed outside both parties' homes, talk shows dissecting every move, and social media lit up with theories, rumors, and heated debates. From an outsider's perspective, it looked like the biggest celebrity meltdown in years. Yet, behind the sensational headlines and TikTok rants, the key players were gearing up for a showdown that would be fought on 2 fronts: the courtroom and the court of public opinion. The opening round in any legal war sets the tone for everything that follows. As Blake and Justin faced each other in court for the first time, tensions were running at an all-time high. The hearing, lasting about 90 minutes, was supposed to be a straightforward procedural session. Nothing too dramatic, just the usual preliminary arguments. But from the moment proceedings began, it was clear that this case was different.
People and humanity are inherently good. And they crave nutritious food in their soul, just as they do in their...
Justin's lead attorney, Brian Fredman, took center stage with an aggression that left observers, and even Blake's lawyers, visibly unsettled. Before long, it was obvious Fredman had zero intention of treating this like a routine civil dispute. He was there to fight, and he made that crystal clear with every word. It wasn't just about quietly filing motions and letting the judge decide. Fredman wanted the world to know he believed Blake's claims were baseless, orchestrated, and fueled by ulterior motives. Blake's attorneys tried to push back. They filed a request for a gag order, hoping to muzzle Fredman and prevent him from making any more explosive statements outside the courtroom. Their argument was that Fredman's relentless media presence was sabotaging their ability to respond effectively. While they were busy drafting careful rebuttals, Fredman was already sharing his perspective in interviews, on social media, and on newly published websites. It was a classic case of fighting fire with fire, and Blake's team wanted it extinguished immediately, but the judge wasn't swayed. In a swift and decisive move, he denied the gag order. His rationale was straightforward. If Blake's side had been vocal in the media, Justin's side had the right to be vocal too. Stifling Fredman while letting Blake's lawyers speak freely would have been blatantly unfair. Right out of the gate, Justin's team scored a victory that not only boosted their momentum, but also rattled Blake's camp to its core. What followed was a series of lightning-fast rulings that kept favoring Justin, each one seemingly more consequential than the last. By the time the hearing adjourned, Blake's lawyers were left on the defensive, struggling to regain any semblance of control. They discovered, much to their horror, that far from slowing down Justin's legal juggernaut, they had inadvertently given him free rein to keep going, and he had every intention of using that advantage to the fullest.
The idea that people think that they know you, I think because of how intrusive media is these days, people care so much more about your personal life than they do your work, and if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you.
In today's interconnected world, courtroom battles often spill over into social media, online forums, and blogs. That's exactly what happened here. Blake might have gone first by alerting major publications like the New York Times, but Justin escalated the media arms race in a way few saw coming. He launched a website entirely dedicated to the case, promising to upload key evidence, videos, messages, legal documents, and everything else he believed would exonerate him. By doing so, Justin effectively democratized the evidence. Anyone, with an internet connection, could review the raw data and draw their own conclusions. It was a savvy move. Public opinion, after all, matters immensely in Hollywood. Blake's attorneys were livid. They argued that this was trial by internet, an attempt to manipulate how people perceived the evidence before the court had a chance to review it. But Justin's team came prepared with a counter-argument that landed like a 1-2 punch. They reminded the judge that Blake had initiated this media spectacle by taking her claims to a well-known newspaper, giving Justin mere hours to respond. If she could harness the power of mainstream press, why shouldn't he use the internet? To make his case? It was a perspective the judge found compelling. Once again, Blake's team faced disappointment as the court sided with Justin's right to publish his defense. As soon as that ruling cleared, Justin moved into high gear. He didn't just announce the website's existence, he updated it frequently, sometimes multiple times a week. Posts appeared detailing earlier conflicts between him and Blake, alleged text messages that painted a very different picture than the one Blake was selling, and even short video clips of behind-the-scenes footage that supporters claim gave more context to the accusations.
We don't realize there's a whole nother group of women and men that are for looking a certain way, and my wife has a lot of trauma from growing up. And
this approach had immediate repercussions. Longtime Blake fans, who had previously championed her every move, started to waver. Some felt torn, unsure of which version of events to trust. Others accused Justin of orchestrating a smear campaign, but the fact remained, people were talking. Every new update to Justin's site led to fresh waves of social media debates, spawning hashtags, Instagram stories, and Twitter threads dissecting every nuance. Like it or not, the narrative was shifting. Blake wasn't the only one controlling the story now, and for the first time, the tide of public perception wavered in Justin's favor. One of the most nerve-wracking parts of any lawsuit is the deposition, a session where each party is questioned, under oath, with no room to hide behind prepared statements. For Blake Lively, this looming event became a source of immediate dread. Her attorneys scrambled to file motions, preventing Brian Fredman from being the one to lead the questioning. Their justification? Fredman's public statements had been so inflammatory, they feared any deposition would turn into a spectacle, more about humiliating Blake than uncovering the truth. However, the court was unmoved. In yet another major setback for Blake, the II judge ruled she didn't have the right to choose who questioned her. If the court designated Fredman, she'd have to face him, no matter how uncomfortable or combative that encounter might become.
The idea that people think that they know you, I think because of how intrusive media is these days, people care so much more about your personal life than they do your work, and if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you and share it for you.
This ruling ignited even more speculation. Why was Blake so desperate to avoid Fredman's interrogation? If her accusations were valid, wouldn't she want her day under oath to confirm her story once and for all? Her critics jumped on that question, arguing that if she truly believed in her claims, she'd have nothing to hide. Her supporters countered that Fredman had a history of verbally aggressive tactics. They believed his methods could twist a deposition into a confrontation that might overshadow the real facts. Regardless, the die was cast. Blake would soon be in a room, under oath, facing the man she saw as her biggest legal adversary. It was a scenario that even seasoned Hollywood insiders were calling a potential make-or-break moment for the actress. In depositions, every slip of the tongue, every moment of hesitation can become a weapon the opposing party can wield later at trial. Meanwhile, Justin appeared more than ready to face his own deposition, if it came down to it. Some insiders claimed he welcomed the chance to lay out his side of the story under oath, believing it would not only debunk Blake's accusations, but also allow him to display his own evidence. In the media, commentators were already positioning this upcoming deposition round as the event that could either validate or destroy Blake Lively's narrative. One thing was for sure: the tension was about to get even thicker.
But I was like just tracking him down, and then I finally got to read the script, and the script was a thriller. So that was a little confusing to me because he's like such a funny director.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, what is this? Because the script is definitely like a twisting, turning, intense thriller. Is it a comedy or a thriller? And he said, yes.
As procedural hurdles fell one by one, the judge announced another bombshell that took this entire saga to new heights. Both lawsuits would be merged into one case. That meant Blake's $250 million suit and Justin's $400 million countersuit were no longer separate fights. Instead, they would be addressed together in a single trial, currently slated for March 2026. Suddenly, the idea of a never-ending legal tug-of-war vanished. Instead, it became clear that there would be one massive showdown, with both sides presenting their evidence, calling witnesses, and battling for the jury's favor. Blake's camp could no longer count on wearing Justin down over multiple smaller hearings, and Justin's side could no longer watch from the sidelines as Blake tried to litigate the matter in the press. The financial stakes were astronomical. A $400 million judgment against Blake isn't just a painful fine. It's a sum capable of sinking even high-earning Hollywood A-listers. Adding Ryan Reynolds to the mix only highlighted how dire things could get. They might have considerable wealth, but losing a case of this magnitude could require selling off assets, renegotiating deals, and facing the humiliation of public financial strain.
I realize there's a whole nother group of women and men that are for looking a certain way, and my wife has a lot of trauma from
On top of the money, reputations were on the line. While Hollywood can occasionally forgive or even embrace scandal, it rarely forgets. If Blake is found liable for defamation and extortion, or if Justin is pegged as having committed serious misconduct, neither would walk away unscathed. For Blake especially, a damaging verdict could dismantle the carefully built image she'd cultivated over years, an image that hinged on her charm, philanthropy, and down-to-earth persona. Social media was ablaze with speculation on how this might end. Some claimed they expected a settlement, a behind-the-scenes deal that would keep the worst revelations sealed away from public scrutiny. Others insisted it was too late for a quiet resolution, that the grudges and accusations had grown too personal. There were also rumors that major studios were watching closely, anxious about whether either star could emerge from this with enough goodwill left to carry a big-budget project. No matter how you looked at it, this merged lawsuit was the catalyst for total upheaval. With the trial date set, the clock began ticking. Each side had a limited window to gather every scrap of evidence and craft the most compelling narrative possible. Losing this case wouldn't just mean a painful financial penalty. It could spell the end of a Hollywood career, especially for Blake, whose star power had once felt untouchable.
He was, you know, after I gave birth, he was like, oh my gosh, you know, if I lost you and I, you know, went to the park with our 3 kids, I mean, think of the ladies I can. Like, this is a horrible thing to say. And he's like, I mean, I've got a long list. And I was like, oh really? Because I just.
While Blake scrambled to keep her footing, Justin Baldoni remained laser-focused on a meticulous plan. His website, where he posted new updates, wasn't just for show. It served as a kind of open journal, documenting his evidence for the world to see. In doing so, he wasn't just courting the judge and jury, he was courting public opinion. One carefully presented document after another made it appear as though Justin's story had weight, authenticity, and a chain of receipts. Behind the scenes, Sources claimed Justin hired a private investigative team to dig deeper into any connections or communications that could prove Blake's allegations were orchestrated. The rumor mill suggested he had uncovered older emails, confidential text exchanges, and statements from people close to both parties that cast doubt on Blake's motives. Whether these were concrete bombs or mere speculation remained a mystery, but they sent shockwaves of anxiety through her fan base and, presumably, her legal team. Meanwhile, Hollywood insiders whispered about the power shift taking place. At one time, Blake might have seemed unstoppable, a beloved actress, brand ambassador, and part of a Hollywood power couple. Now Justin, an actor, producer, and director with a growing platform, was stepping into a spotlight many never imagined he'd occupy. He wasn't just seeking legal vindication, he was leveraging every opportunity to show that Blake's allegations weren't just false, they were malicious.
The idea that people think that they know you, I think because of how intrusive media is these days, people care so much more about your personal life than they do your work, and if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you and share it for you.
Observers pointed out that if Justin could substantiate his countersuit of $400 million and prove real harm was done to his reputation or finances, the court might grant him a massive award. That prospect alone was enough to make even some of Blake's most devoted allies question whether she had taken things too far. Why poke a bear if you're not absolutely certain of your case? In the end, Justin's approach could be described as methodical, relentless, and unapologetic. He refused to let the conversation be dictated solely by mainstream media, preferring to provide his own narrative through direct, transparent updates. If that transparency succeeded in winning over the general public, it would be a formidable advantage for him, one that Blake might find insurmountable as the trial date approached. Blake Lively had long been the darling of Hollywood, with a seemingly unblemished record of charitable work, fashion-forward appearances, and a knack for charming audiences both on-screen and in interviews. So when fans started to see cracks in her public image, the shift in perception was dramatic. Some longtime admirers felt betrayed that their favorite star was involved in such a vicious legal struggle. Others insisted there must be a deeper story, one the public hadn't fully grasped yet. Yet the more Blake's legal team scrambled to keep the case under wraps, the more suspicion they generated.
The idea that people think that they know you, I think because of how intrusive media is these days, people care so much more about your personal life than they do your work, and if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you and share it for you.
Reporters found themselves frustrated at the team's reluctance to respond to queries. Online, people speculated whether Blake was trying to hide something incriminating. Every minor development, every sealed motion, every brief court appearance fueled new theories that maybe Blake's allegations were less substantial than she'd first claimed. Even some of her peers in the industry quietly backed away. Nobody wanted to risk their own reputations by throwing public support behind one side, only to find out later they'd bet on the wrong horse. In Hollywood, associations can be make or break. Until the facts became clearer, many opted for cautious neutrality. Meanwhile, Blake's once robust social media presence started looking carefully curated and somewhat sanitized. Gone were the candid jokes or interactions with fans. In their place were generic promotional posts that felt detached from the heated situation brewing behind the scenes. Public relations experts suggested this approach could backfire. In an era where authenticity is treasured, coming across as aloof or overly scripted might only accelerate a negative shift in public sentiment. At the same time, rumors swirled about the toll this was taking on her personal life, particularly regarding her marriage to Ryan Reynolds. The two had always presented a united front, but insiders whispered that this lawsuit was adding an unprecedented layer of stress to their household. If Blake lost, the financial ramifications would affect them both, tarnishing their family name, and quite possibly their future opportunities in film and beyond.
It was like just tracking him down, and then I finally got to read the script, and the script was a thriller. So that was a little confusing to me because he's like such a funny director.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, what is this? Because the script is definitely like a twisting, turning, intense thriller. Is it a comedy or a thriller? And he said, yes.
So here we are, watching a legal drama that grows more unpredictable by the day. The stakes couldn't be higher. Reputations are on the line, hundreds of millions of dollars are up for grabs, and the public is ravenous for every new nugget of information. Even in a place like Hollywood, where scandals, breakups, and lawsuits happen every other week, this case stands out for its sheer scale and intensity. What's next? If neither side blinks, we'll be heading for that trial in March 2026, where everything could come crashing down for Blake if she fails to back up her claims. Justin has already shown he has the receipts, the resources, and the determination to fight this to the bitter end. If Blake can't gain any legal victories soon, she may find herself cornered, facing not just the potential loss of $400 million, but the collapse of a once sterling reputation. On the other hand, it's always possible that, in the months leading up to trial, cooler heads will prevail. Maybe there's a settlement waiting in the wings. Maybe new evidence will surface, shifting the narrative again. The question is, will pride and anger continue fueling this conflict until it becomes unstoppable? Or will both parties realize that sometimes the most shocking twist is the one where they find a way to walk away? For now, the outcome remains uncertain. Hollywood is on the edge of its seat, and fans on social media are glued to every update. After all, the biggest show in Tinseltown these days isn't a new blockbuster movie, it's the unfolding legal battle between two powerhouse figures who once seemed unstoppable. Whether this ends with a handshake, an apology, or a final devastating court verdict, one thing's for sure: the consequences will reverberate far beyond their respective careers, shaping how Hollywood's elite handle lawsuits, reputation, and the fine line between personal feuds and public showdowns. Stay tuned, because if this story has taught us anything, it's that every new development comes with its own wave of bombshells. Neither side is surrendering quietly, and the closer we get to that trial date, the more layers of this complicated feud are likely to be peeled back. In the end, the biggest casualty might not be the finances at all. It could be the myth of untouchable celebrity power laid bare for the world to scrutinize.